Look, we're diving right in today because there is a tiny, totally innocent-looking mistake in Cambridge IT 9626 that is literally destroying grade boundaries. Seriously, you might feel great about your basic definitions, but knowing the textbook definition and actually scoring the mark, yeah, those are two completely different things. Just look at this student's answer. Data is raw facts, information is processed data, validation checks if data is sensible. Now, that perfectly recites the theory, right? If you open up your textbook, that is word for word what it says. So why on earth did this score an absolute 0 when applied to a 9626 payroll scenario? No marks at all. Here is the harsh reality of the mark scheme. If you just write down generic theory and you don't anchor it to the specific scenario they gave you, whether it's a payroll system, a hospital, or a secure website, you are not getting top band marks. The examiner is not testing if you swallowed a dictionary. They are testing if you can actually solve a real-world IT problem. Which brings us to Section 1, the context trap, and exactly why ordinary revision totally fails for the subject. Students fall into these common 9626 errors all the time. Look at these: mixing up direct and indirect data, totally confusing validation with verification, or swapping online and real-time processing. And why does this happen? It's because we tend to memorize these things in total isolation. We lack comparative thinking. If you just memorize what encryption is, but you can't compare it to authentication in a specific exam scenario, you are going to drop major marks when they ask you to evaluate them. So let's look at Section 2, the structured solution path, our high-mark answer framework. Now, hang tight for just a second. In a moment, I am going to reveal the exact examiner's clue that flips a 0-mark answer into a top band score. Seriously. It's a game changer. But first, you really need the structural framework that actually makes that clue obvious. Without it, you won't spot the trap. We need a disciplined path that forces your brain to connect the technology directly to the scenario. So here's that framework. It's the Peel method plus a judgment. Point, evidence, explanation, link to scenario, and judgment. It's kind of brilliant because it mirrors exactly how marks are earned in those extended responses. It literally forces your brain to classify the technology, explain the sequence of how it actually works, and most crucially, link it back to a practical consequence for the user. If you want a bulletproof memory structure for all your IT basics, you need these 4 prompts. What is it? How does it work? Where is it used? And why is it better or worse than the alternative? Honestly, if you can say the answers to these 4 prompts out loud for any concept, like monitoring software or database security, you are exam ready. If not, well, you got to rebuild your notes using a core contrast and a worked example. Let's see this in action with Section 3, the transformation. Time to fix a flawed answer. Okay, bringing it back to our cold open mistake, let's see how our framework totally transforms it. On the left, there's our 0-mark generic answer, validation checks if data is sensible. Yikes. Now check out the top band answer on the right. In the payroll system, a range check ensures hours worked do not exceed 40, preventing overpayment. You see the difference? It doesn't just name drop the concept, it specifies the exact process, a range check. It anchors it directly to the payroll scenario, hours worked, and it states the practical outcome, preventing overpayment. Boom, that is how you get the marks. All right, on to Section 4, pause and predict. This is your interactive challenge. I want you to do the heavy lifting here. Read this highly realistic 9626 hospital scenario. It says a hospital uses a real-time monitoring system. And a student wrote this answer. The system uses validation to ensure the patient's heart rate data is correct. The system uses validation to ensure the patient's heart rate data is correct. So spot the error. I literally want you to pause this explainer right now. Grab a pen and write down your prediction of what the examiner would say. Can you spot the classic wrong turn here? What is the fatal flaw in this student's answer? Okay, let's see if you hit the nail on the head. Here's the examiner-style feedback. The fatal flaw? Using the word correct. Validation absolutely cannot ensure data is correct. It only checks if it's reasonable. If a sensor reads 150 beats per minute, validation just says, hey, that's a reasonable human number. It doesn't mean it's the actual correct number for that specific patient at that specific second. That is verification. Plus, this answer totally skips over how the process works and why it matters in a life-or-death patient monitoring situation. To completely bypass that trap, your revision needs this 3-pass cycle. First, fix your key definitions and contrasts. You have to know the difference between validation and verification cold. Second, rehearse your worked explanations. Actually practice writing out the steps of how the tech functions. And third, adapt by changing the context. You've got to be able to justify your IT choices whether the exam throws a hospital, a school, or a bank at you.
Which brings us to Section 5, the final piece, the hidden mark killer.
So, we've solved the context problem, you've got the framework down, but there is still one massive hidden trap waiting to ambush you on exam day. You could have the perfect context, the perfect four-prompt structure, and these beautiful peel paragraphs, but there is still a way your score gets instantly capped, and it's all based on a single misunderstood word at the very start of the question. To find out exactly how command words decide your mark band and why describing a system when you're actually asked to evaluate it will instantly tank your grade, you must watch our next explainer. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, Ace the Exams at acetheexams_IGCSE to excel in your Cambridge examinations. Because really, what good is having perfect IT knowledge if you end up answering a question the examiner never even asked? I will see you in the next explainer where we decode those command words.